Greetings and welcome to Talk a Little, Learn a Lot, the American Society of Naval Engineers podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Phillips. In this podcast, we talk a little and learn a lot about naval engineering while inspiring the next generation of STEM professionals. Today, I'm joined by Richard Celotto to talk about the 2024 Naval and Science Technology Symposium, and also his role as the chairman of the ASNE Scholarship Committee. Here at the Combat Systems Symposium, we're focusing on a specific subset of challenges. Given real-world operations and conflicts in both Eastern Europe and the Middle East, during this symposium, participants will delve into our offensive and defensive weapons that have been used or may be called into service, tactics used to employ those weapons, and how we maintain and sustain those weapons to ensure they are available when needed. The symposium will also look at future weapons capabilities from both the benefits and challenges perspectives. Rich, thank you for joining me on the podcast. I look forward to our discussion.
And so do I.
Rich, why don't we start with you introducing yourself to the Talk a Little, Learn a Lot audience.
Okay. So, Steve, I am celebrating my 50th year of membership in ASNE. I went to school, got a degree in Naval Architecture and Marine Engineering from Webb Institute of Naval Architecture. That was back in 1974. Webb is one of the premier colleges in the U.S. in teaching ship design. But it was mostly commercial ship design. I found out that even though I was colorblind, I could get into the Navy as a direct accession engineering duty officer. So I applied for that and was accepted for OCS and got my commission in May of 1974 as an ED, Reserve ED. My first assignment was on a 1,200 PSI steam-powered destroyer, guided missile destroyer, the Claude V. Ricketts DDG-5. That was my first introduction to the Navy and to naval marine engineering, running, operating, and trying to maintain and keeping a 1,200-pound steam plant going. Fascinating experience. My whole career in the Navy had many assignments in operations and maintenance, but the focus was predominantly design and acquisition. I was involved in 5 different Navy ship acquisition programs, and that culminated with my tour at Soup Ship San Diego as the new construction officer at NASSCO for the construction of the AOA-6 class fast replenishment ships. And then NASSCO won both a sea lift conversion and a sea lift new construction programs. And so I was there for the startup of both of those programs. Retired from the Navy in 1996 and went to work for designers and planners here in Washington, D.C., and had a variety of jobs there, vice president jobs in operations and engineering. And then most recently moved to CACI, and I work on a project there, a Navy NAVSEA FMS contract, supporting the Canadian Navy for the acquisition of their Canadian surface combatant, now called the River-class destroyer. Very fascinating project, and has reintroduced me to surface combatants and more interest in combat systems. And so that's one of the reasons why, besides volunteering at CSS today, I'm really enjoying the presentations on combat systems.
Rich, all of us that are members of ASNE presumably have a passion, an affinity for naval engineering. When did you realize that you had a connection or a love for naval engineering?
So as I said, I came out of Webb Institute in 74 with a fabulous education, robust education in naval architecture, marine engineering. But Webb is focused on commercial ship design. But joined the Navy, of course, got my commission through OCS, went to the Claude V. Ricketts, and was thrust into the world of naval engineering in the maintenance and operation of that 1,200-pound steam plant, and really enjoyed it. For a marine engineer, it was like being in heaven to actually be that close to machinery and operate it. Challenging, of course. The maintenance requirements on 1,200 PSI steam plants is phenomenally high. You never could relax, ever. The Navy sent me to MIT to get a master's degree in naval architecture and marine engineering, with the focus, of course, on naval engineering, and that's when I really got excited about it. And then, I was just quite frankly in heaven being a naval engineer, an engineering duty officer in the Navy. Enjoyed every one of my assignments, and they were quite varied. 5 years at NAVC, assignments in the field. The Navy sent me back to MIT to be an associate professor in that naval engineering program that I had been sent to for my master's degree. There I got to teach the next generation of engineering duty officers about naval engineering, to realize how long I've been around that next generation, or now retired captains and admirals. It's been a while, but that was exciting too, and certainly being at MIT, helping to coordinate naval research by the faculty there was an exciting opportunity also. And then working at BMT Designers and Planners, supporting the Navy and the Coast Guard. I spent 12 years leading a team supporting the Coast Guard deepwater program as it originally started out. But that was helping the Coast Guard acquire essentially recapitalize the whole surface fleet. Loved the Coast Guard, fell in love with it, fantastic organization, and that was an exciting place to be. And seeing now some of those ships, like the National Security Cutter, out there operating, that was also, again, a refresher on Combat Systems, because the NSC has all Navy-type, Navy-owned combat systems. And that was very interesting to get that aspect of it, because predominantly I'm a platform-oriented naval architect, marine engineer, not a combat systems engineer.
What do you think are the key challenges in naval engineering today?
My own perception is that, there's two. One, of course, is it takes us so long to design and construct and get new ships out in the fleet. And we all have read in the news, of course, that so many of our construction programs are behind schedule. I think part of that is simply that among the challenges, we design very complex ships. These are not easy ships to design. One of the things I love about naval engineering is it's really hard. I find that just fascinating and exciting to be able to integrate the C5I systems that are required onto platforms and do all the things that Navy ships have to do at sea. So that's part of it, of course. And the other part is that I think there just aren't enough engineers and there aren't enough shipyard workers in the United States to keep up with the demand. So I'm always looking to how can I help influence the next generation, both engineers, white collar, to go to college, get a degree, and get into naval engineering. But I also look for young men and women who aren't necessarily going to go to college, but are looking for a career in the trades. And I always say, hey, get into shipbuilding, because you'll find it extremely rewarding, more exciting than just, working around building houses. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but building ships, it is just so much fun and really hard. And you're so proud of when that ship delivers, everybody in the shipyard is so proud.
Rich, I heard you when you said that your focus is really more on shipbuilding than combat systems. But of course, today we're at the Combat Systems Symposium. Is there anything that you hope to see or be introduced to today? Is there an area of research that you want to connect with?
Well, one of the things I've just been sitting in, once we got through the intense registration period this morning, and things slowed down a bit, I've been able to sit in on the first panel. And they're talking about the threat, which is constantly evolving, and the fact that we have to evolve even faster than the threat is. I was reminded of the fact that our Navy is at sea fighting today, defending itself, defending other countries. That's something I think a lot of us don't keep in our mind, that the Navy is at sea doing its job. But also, learning that there are sustainment issues. We're firing a lot of missiles, and how able are we to replenishment those? The panelists are talking about that, as well as the evolving threat and being able to put more tools in the toolkit of the warfighters. So that's something that on the platform side we don't think of as much. So that's what I'm really finding interesting, and I'm hoping to learn more about today, is how are we responding to clearly a very fast evolving threat.
Let's shift and talk about ASNE for a moment, the organization. And I want to talk about your role as the chairman for the scholarship committee. What's involved in that role, and could you share with the audience the scholarships that ASNE offers to students?
Absolutely. That's one of the things that really excites me about ASNE. So I've been on this committee on and off for about 25 years now, and have been blessed to and honored to be able to serve as chairman for quite some time. So ASNE has been providing scholarships since 1987 to both undergraduate, well, originally only undergraduate, and now graduate as well as undergraduate. Our scholarships are $4,000 each. We award about 15 to 18 a year. The goal of the program is to encourage students to pursue careers in naval engineering. And for many of the students that we award scholarships to, if it wasn't for the scholarship, which attracts them, of course, students are always interested in paying for school. For many of them, they probably never had heard of naval engineering, didn't know it existed. And our goal through this program, of course, is to make more of them aware that ASNE exists. And one of the things we do is, although we award 15 to 18 scholarships a year, for all applicants, we actually give them a one-year subscription to ASNE, membership in ASNE. So they get the journal, and again, it's part of our overall effort to expose them to naval engineering. But it's very rewarding. We get, the applications we get are extraordinary, the talent that is out there. We get them from some of our traditional schools, my own alma mater, like Webb Institute, University of Michigan, another fabulous school when it comes to naval architecture, marine engineering. But ASNE, as you know, is very broad. It covers, naval engineering is very broad. And so we are seeking out students who don't necessarily have an interest in naval architecture, marine engineering, and of course we have those, but electrical engineering, computer science, materials science, all of those different disciplines that we know those of us practicing naval engineering are all required in order to design and get ships to sea. So we have a great committee. There's about a dozen of us on the committee. Almost every section is represented on that committee. Wonderful group of volunteers. We're currently in our application phase, so we open up the applications in October, and they are due in early February normally, and then the committee goes through that, usually through a two-step process to narrow it down to the most competitive, and by the end of April we make our selections, and then we make a recommendation to the National Council of who specifically we would like to give scholarships to. And the council always endorses our recommendations.
What a great opportunity. I hope that some students hear this podcast and then get introduced to the organization and decide to apply for those scholarships. Maybe we should do a podcast sometime in the future where we talk to some of the scholarship awardees and hear about the impact that it had on their own studies. I think that would be fun.
Yes, I've already identified a couple of candidates, and one who has said he'd absolutely love to do a testimonial to how it's influenced his career.
What ASNE events have you participated in over the years?
So,
maybe a better question is, do you have a favorite?
Well, my newest favorite is the one that I was on the planning committee for, and that was the Arctic-Antarctic Symposium that took place earlier this year. I was one of the members of the planning committee. I had not been on a planning committee of an ASNE symposium before. It was a real wild ride. I have a tremendous appreciation now for headquarters staff and members of any of the planning committees for these symposiums. It takes a lot of work, a lot of time, tremendous amount of communications. I must have 1,000 emails associated with getting ready for that symposium. But it was just terrific to bring together representatives of many organizations, the Navy, the Coast Guard, On the commercial side, the classification societies, just to name a few, and talk about the Arctic and the Antarctic, Navy and Coast Guard missions in those areas, and what we are doing, the programs that are in place to accomplish those missions and to be ready to accomplish probably what is going to be an expanding area of operations for both the Navy and the Coast Guard in the Arctic especially. Of course, with global warming, there's just a lot more attention in the Arctic, and the Navy and the Coast Guard have to be prepared to operate up there. So a great symposium. I'm looking forward to the next one that we host here.
I'm looking forward too. It's an area that I find fascinating. So hopefully I'll be able to attend that one next year and maybe do some podcast interviews while we're there. Have you ever written for the Naval Engineers Journal?
Yes, but focused on the scholarship program. So periodically I've been asked to do articles, which I've written, talking about the history of the program, some of our legacy scholarships. So we have scholarships that are named in honor of folks. My local section, ASNE flagship section, we award 2 scholarships, 2 to 3 a year, and we always try to name at least one of them. For 40 years, we did the Lisnick Scholarship in honor of Dr. Lisnick, a ship design manager at NAVSEA who was tragically killed in an automobile accident 40 years ago. Most recently, we had a scholarship in memory of Sheldon Johnson, a long-serving member of Flagship Section, and Captain Barry Tibbetts, one of the great naval engineers of our generation, of our lifetime, who passed away sadly recently, and one of our scholarships is given in his memory.
Thinking about the organization itself, what changes would you like to see for ASNE?
So I've been an ASNE member for 50 years, but I've been a member of the Society of Naval Architects, SNAME, for 54 years. All Webbies join SNAME, mostly because we get a discount on the SNAME books, which are part of our curriculum. So, and I love SNAME, a fabulous organization. And one of the things I admire about SNAME is that it has an extremely robust student program. There's an annual student congress that occurs when SNAME has its annual meeting, the World Maritime Conference. And we get upwards of 200 students attending that for 3 days. And the energy you get from those students and watching them is just amazing. And I've always envied, as an ASNE person, I've always envied my SNAME organization for having that program running. And I've always wished that we could somehow expand the young engineer, the student participation in that. Of course, naval engineering is much more focused, narrowly focused. SNAME is commercial ship design, and offshore engineering is very broad. And I know ASNE has been trying for several years, for a long time, to try and increase its student population. And I think that's something we need to really work on because, again, we're trying to capture the interest of the next generation and excite them about naval engineering. And the best way to do that, one of the best places to do that is when they're in school, and because that might influence them getting their first job out of school in naval engineering, whether it's working for the government, for example, at NAVSEA, or at the Coast Guard Engineering Center, or in industry, going to work for ship design firms or even in shipyards, in the engineering departments of shipyards.
What aspects or elements of ASNE do you want to preserve?
Well, I think that we have a great set of symposiums. FMMS, Mega Rust, of course here, this week we're conducting Combat Systems Symposium and then Technology, Ship and Systems. Those symposiums are very important. I think people look forward to those. They're very identifiable as ASNE events. The Antarctic Symposium, we don't do that every year, but when we did it this year, there was a lot of excitement. The people who came to that were so glad to have that opportunity again. So, of course, conducting symposiums, I think, is one of the most important things that ASNE does. The other thing is continuing education. I know that this week there is a Combat Systems Engineering course that's going to take place, and I've heard fabulous things about this course, and I was very excited to find out that it's open to participants from the Five Eyes Nation, and I'm going to hopefully work to see if, because I support the Canadian Surface Combatant Program, to see if I can make it more aware of the Canadians that this course exists. But I think that continuing education, naval engineering, is a real value add for the membership.
Rich, now I've learned that you and I are not just kindred spirits because we're both ASNE members and have a passion for naval engineering. We're also both storytellers. So I'm interested, do you have a great naval engineering sea story to share with the Talk a Little, Learn a Lot audience?
Well, let me see. Sure. One of my favorite ones was involving when we were constructing the AOE-6 class at NASCO. And some of the audience might know that the AOE-6 was a 4 LM2500 gas turbine plant. Very powerful engineering plant, but it had a fixed pitch propeller. Most gas turbine ships have controllable reversible pitch because you can't reverse the gas turbine. Well, so how did we do that? Well, we had a reversing reduction gear. It was the Franco-Tosi reversing reduction gear. And now this gear had been tested extensively at NAVSES Philly before committing to put it on a ship. They chose the AOE-6. And so there's a long story about just getting the gears to the AOE-6. I won't go into that. But we finally got them on the ship, and we decided that we needed to do a propulsion trial. So this was pre-builder's trial. We wanted to just get it out there and do a propulsion trial. So we took the ship out we went through the paces, and all of a sudden we found that we had oil shooting out of every port, including the vent fog precipitator on the gear. We had oil coming out the top of the gear, and couldn't figure out. That was bad.
That's
yes.
bad, yeah.
Now, the project officer for the gear, just to get the gear delivered, was a young officer then, now retired, Captain Charlie Burrell. And so he pulled together the engineers from NAVC, the engineers from Cincinnati Gear that was building the gear. And we ultimately figured out that the problem was that the oil, essentially the gear was being over-lubricated, and the oil couldn't drain through the gear mesh fast enough to get back down into the sump. And I remember vividly, I can picture to this day, running tests out there at sea, and Charlie Burrell standing on top of the gear and giving us directions for reversing it and trying to make sure that he didn't get covered with oil during the process. What we ended up doing, again, the great collaboration between NAVC engineers and Cincinnati Gear and the shipyard, which had to take the change and immediately implement it. But basically, we did bypass surgery on the reduction gear. We actually added pipes that took some of the gear from the upper case, some of the oil from the upper casing, and directed it directly down into the sump, essentially bypassing the mesh, because the mesh was getting adequate, more than adequate oil. And we had to put that in place within a matter of weeks. Big pipes, get them bent and installed, and of course keep the system clean. We didn't want to contaminate the reduction gear. So it was a marvel to see the engineering and the construction work by NASCO Shipyard. We took the ship back out to sea on builder's trials, and it worked. And we were able to have a successful builder's trials. One of my I was just so thrilled to be part of that evolution. And of course, as the new construction officer responsible to get the ship delivered, I was really glad that we were able to get a solution put in place in a remarkably short amount of time.
That is a great story. Thank you for sharing that. Well, thank you again, Rich Celotto, for taking this time to discuss ASNE and the Naval Science and Technology Symposium, your view and your thoughts on ASNE, and indeed the scholarship program with the Talk a Little, Learn a Lot audience. I hope that we can have you again on the show sometime in the future.
Sure, Steve. Invite me back anytime. This was a great conversation.